President Trump tweeting that the oil markets are going to see a huge cut in output. He says, quote, just spoke to my friend MBS, the Crown Prince over in Saudi Arabia, who spoke with President Putin of Russia, and I expect and hope that they will be cutting back approximately 10 million barrels a day and maybe substantially more, which, if it happens, will be great for the oil and gas industry. Let's bring in now to this conversation Bloomberg's Annmarie Hordern. Annmarie, let's talk a little bit about kind of what we know. Is this actually going to happen here? The Russians are sounding a little bit more cautious, but it looks like President Trump has banged a few heads together.
Yeah, it certainly does with this tweet. And of course, you're seeing that reaction in the oil market up right now. One thing I would say is that we're also hearing from the kingdom, and they're calling for an urgent OPEC meeting. The kingdom wants this OPEC meeting and all other countries to meet with the aim of seeking a fair agreement that will restore the desired balance of the oil markets. I would say it's not a done deal yet until you get Alexander Novak inside the room with His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman. Of course, we've seen this story really impact U.S. oil producers, especially in the Permian. And I'm really pleased that we're going to be joined now by Ryan Sitton, Texas Railroad Commissioner. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure you just saw this news of this tweet. What do you make of it? I think it became clear from Saudi Arabia that they want everyone to share the burden of cutting production. With Trump having this tweet, does this signal that all three major producers are willing to cut?
When you say all three major producers, you mean Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the United States?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, look, this is happening already, right? You've seen just this week, the Texas Railroad Commission, received a request from Texas producers, some Texas producers, to begin to prorate production here in Texas. Most of us feel like, look, any one entity acting alone cannot balance this market. I put out some data just yesterday showing the market is already 18 million barrels a day oversupplied. That was before we got the job numbers, the recent layoff numbers from the United States we got this morning. When you model that in, I think we're now probably closer to 22, 24 million barrels a day oversupplied. So the world oil suppliers are feeling the crunch. And in order to balance this, it's going to absolutely take a global response.
Industry groups, though, Ryan, like American Petroleum Institute, the Texas Oil and Gas Association, they've criticized your plan to pro-ration. How do you get all of the U.S. producers on board? It seems very divided at the moment.
It does. And one of the things that I think has been missed a little bit in the headlines as opposed to kind of the deep inner workings, no one has actually proposed proration yet. What we've done is say, let's have a conversation and figure out how we bring these different groups together. And if we are going to prorate, what would that look like? Some of these trade associations came out ahead of time before we even started and said, we don't even want to talk about this, which seems really short-sighted. And I think a lot, that was, of course, in the first week. Since then, a lot of people have said, you know, this is continuing to get really bad. Maybe we should have the conversation. So we're seeing a lot of people's positions soften on this as they realize the magnitude of this problem.
Well, so, Commissioner, we've reported here at Bloomberg that two other commissioners at the Railroad Commission have voiced reservations about the pro-rationing production. Where would you stand if there was a vote today? Would you be outnumbered?
Well, I'll tell you what, no one's ready to have a vote for today. In fact, myself and only two of the commissioners have actually made public statements, me and then Wayne Christian. And both of us have basically said very similar things. We're both cautious. We're free market people. We don't believe in government controls. But we also recognize the extraordinary circumstances, and therefore we should look at any option to bring stability to global energy markets. So we're very close to the same page, and we're not ready to take a vote until we get the folks in the room and hear all the various opinions and options. Now, I don't know if you've heard this, but we're right now pushing for an April 14th open meeting where we, the commissioners, would hear testimony from producers and industry groups and economists from all over the world about how we might do this in Texas for the first time in 50 years. And I assume the other commissioners, but certainly me, waiting to see what we learn and what we hear and ideas we get in now a little less than 2 weeks before we make any moves.
Commissioner, you spoke a few moments ago about the huge effort that will be needed to balance the crude market right now. Americans aren't driving, Europeans aren't driving, the global economy is in lockdown and demand is non-existent. How big an effort do you think you're talking about here? How much of a supply cut do you think we actually need to see to balance the market?
I think if you wanted to balance the markets today, we got to bring probably 20 to 25 million barrels a day of production offline. Now, let's say this. That's going to happen one way or the other because storage is filling up. My model says that we're going to fill up storage around the world in the next 2 months. So if we get to June 1st and there's no more storage left in the world, then the markets will balance because you can only produce as much crude as being consumed if there's no intermittent storage. I think the question is not will markets come into balance. The question is, will it be done in a strategic, thoughtful way, or will it be done in a reactive way once all of the storage fills up? And I, of course, am a proponent of the first, that we take a more thoughtful global approach to reacting to this extraordinary circumstance.
Yeah, Ryan, one thing I think we should mention, too, though, Putin, according to his press person Peskov, says that he's actually not spoken to the Crown Prince. So I'm wondering whether or not this is too premature. But if we were to see 10 million barrels a day come off the market, demand destruction is immense. Do you think he'll even do anything to prices?
To be quite blunt, I don't think it's going to push prices up anywhere close to where they were before COVID-19. But what it does, if you pull 10 million barrels a day out of the market, that now extends the life of intermittent storage. So it says, okay, instead of filling up storage around the world in 2 months, maybe it takes 4 months. And if during those 4 months the world gets back on its feet and we pull out of all this shelter in place, then perhaps that gives us enough time to bring things under control. So yes, I think it will bring prices up, but I don't think we're going to see WTI at $45 or $50 a barrel anytime before the end of the year. Even if we do see that 10 million barrels out.